Okay, I think it looks like it's 1:15, so I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Pete Chadwick. I'm Director of Product Management for Cloud and Systems Management, and within, actually the best way to explain that is to just go to this slide. So I essentially own here on up, as far as the SUSE portfolio goes, also own SUSE Manager, and have been working on with public cloud providers as well. What we're going to focus on today is what we call our application delivery portfolio. And just as a way of kind of working into this is a picture we put together actually for SUSECON back in Amsterdam. So what was that, 2015? And the idea was we were moving beyond just providing SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, which is obviously what we're known for and have done for 25 years. And we had branched off into SUSE OpenStack Cloud, and we had introduced SUSE Enterprise Storage. And so we realized that there was a portfolio coming together around software-defined infrastructure. And so the way we looked at it at that point was, OpenStack was sort of the top of our delivery, and then it would drive down into hypervisor, SUSE Enterprise Storage, networking, so SDN functions. Typically, SDN is a third-party partner provided, like Cisco or Juniper, somebody like that. But we also do ship Open vSwitch, which some people believe is a software-defined networking technology. And then last SUSECON in Prague, we had announced SUSE CaaS platform. We were coming out with a cloud application platform, and we realized that this was really targeting much more towards application delivery as opposed to infrastructure. So we decided that we would put this together in a way that made more sense. And the point of this picture is really that, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, is you need if you're going to run cloud-native applications, you need a cloud to run them on. So you can either do that via public cloud over on this side, or if you want to build your own private cloud stack, you can do so. Now, why are customers going down this path? Why do people need to transform themselves? And you heard James Staten talk about this the other day at the keynote. Every company is becoming a technology company. And one of the things, I actually disagree with the statement that technology has become a driver of competitive advantage. I think technology has become a necessity. If you aren't adapting to, as any organization is not adapting to becoming sort of a digital-first technology company, they're at a competitive disadvantage. And the story I like to use on this is a month or so ago, had to buy my wife a present for Valentine's Day. Just kind of thing you have to do. Of course, I was doing this 2 days before Valentine's Day, and that kind of says, I got to go online and find something real quick. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the retailer LL Bean. So I go in their catalog, on their website, because I knew there was something my wife wanted. I go in there, I find the thing, and I click on it, says, out of stock online. Oh my God, what do I do? And not even thinking about this, there's an LL Bean store 2 miles from my house. But I was, you're just in the moment of the panic, you're not even thinking about it. Then I see this little button that says, check local store for availability. You click on that, it says 3 available. Boom, I'm out the door, I get the thing, everybody's happy. But the point is, if they hadn't integrated their systems, if they hadn't really started thinking of themselves as a technology company as opposed to a reseller of clothing or outdoor stuff, they would have lost a sale. I would have gone to Amazon, I would have done something else, I would have found an alternative, and they would have lost that opportunity. So I really think that certainly in the retail space, we see this with all the retail customers are doing this, but I think pretty much every organization is going through this process. How do I turn myself into a technology company? And then the challenge is, and this is SUSE Linux Enterprise Server for 25 years, right? It's stable, it's secure, it's rock solid. And the operations people that we have been selling to love that. Now you're all starting to talk, I need to be agile. How do I move faster and give the developers the tools they need to make me a technology-first company without giving up all the stability I have? So you want to, reduce cycle times to get applications out the door and move towards cloud-native applications. Why cloud-native? Well, from the first point is they're more robust, they're more agile by definition. But frequently organizations want the ability to move from a private cloud or a data center into a public cloud. And by building my applications in a way that they're cloud aware, cloud native right from the start, that becomes easier. So this is kind of how we look at what the transition is as you go from infrastructure to development process. I actually need to redo this slide because I realized the other day that this is not data center to hosted, managed, to cloud. It's data center plus hosted and managed plus cloud. Most of the organizations we're talking to are not going to be all one or all the other. I mean, there's a few that just say flat out, I'm not going to go to public cloud. There's a few that say, I'm going to take everything and put it in the public cloud and get rid of my data centers. But most customers we talk to are going to have a mix of that. Same thing here. Physical servers aren't going to go away. There are going to be some workloads that people will always want to run on dedicated servers. Same thing with VMs, but obviously people are now really focused on how do I take advantage of containers. And if you're not interested in containers, that was weird. If you're not interested in containers, you're probably in the wrong session, because that's pretty much what we're going to talk about for the rest of the day. The other thing we're talking about is application architecture. We started off with mainframe. Big mainframe with a big application, everything's in there, to multi-tier. I've got a web server, I've got a LAMP stack, I've got a database backend, to microservices. Again, and we'll talk about this, some customers are going to do their initial foray into containerizations. They're going to take big applications, stick it in a container, and put it on top of a new platform. But they're not going to rewrite an application that's been running fine for 15 years. I mean, if you've got an inventory control system that works, why would you rewrite it? Instead, I'll put a front end on it, allow my new applications to go make queries against it. So it's kind of a macro service, effectively, as I take my existing applications, put the appropriate interfaces on them, and then use them in my new architecture. And then lastly, development process going from waterfall to agile to full DevOps. Interestingly, we were talking to one of the analysts yesterday, and he said this is flipped, that you really should go to DevOps before you go to agile, because if you don't have a DevOps mindset in your organization, agile's not going to help you. Was kind of their logic. And this is something SUSE goes through, right? I mean, SUSE's enterprise server historically was very much of a waterfall process, but products like Cloud Application Platform and CAS Platform are developed on a much more agile model. I'm not sure we're completely at the DevOps space yet, but nonetheless, we're kind of going through the same transition. So when you look at how people we think are going to consume containers and use those in their environments, we see three primary use cases. The first we're just calling streamlined application development and deployment. This will start off with just taking an existing application, putting it in a container to make it more portable. We've got one customer that is taking everything, putting it in a container just so they can move it to Azure. That's really their primary use case. Others are looking at building new cloud-native applications. Right from the ground up, they're rewriting things. Jeff and I just met with a customer at lunchtime today. That's what they're doing. They said, hey, we've got this old application. We just decided we're going to completely rewrite it. And it's going to be based upon Kubernetes, and that gives us the flexibility that we need. One of the arguments is, their argument is, we don't intend to ever put it in a public cloud, but if we do it correctly, we know that we can. And so the idea is modernize things, give myself more flexibility. And then somewhere in the middle is modernizing legacy applications. That's where I take it, containerize it, then I start putting a RESTful API in front of my old application, and then integrate it with my newer model of doing deployment. So let's look at this a little bit. So if I'm streamlining application development. The idea is that the promise of containers is I can make things small, can shrink the size of the workload, I can get it to start quicker, and it's easier for developers to do this on their own. I mean, that's a little bit arguable. If you look at infrastructure as a service, spinning up a VM is not all that difficult either, really, but it's still, containers give you a smaller footprint and in theory start up faster. And then this is, we think, more important, is because it's completely packaged up. You've got everything you need to execute in any environment. It gives you that flexibility to move things wherever you want to move them. And more importantly, as you go from I'm developing things on my workstation, on my laptop, I hand it off to the production teams, to the staging teams. The environment should not matter. It should just go ahead and work. But if you're going to go do this, you need some additional capabilities. Containers have been around forever. I mean, we were shipping LXC back in 2012, 2013, something like that. What's different now is that as people started to look at how do I really use these, how do I add these kind of capabilities on top of that? How do I schedule the containers? How do I move them around? If I'm really going to do microservices, how do I figure out which services have already been created and are available to me as a developer just to pull into my application, so I don't make it easier to do code reuse effectively? Truly cloud natives, I want to be able to scale out as opposed to scale up. I want to be able to balance loads across servers. So having a solution that can handle all that, and then how do I make it easy to deploy and to back things out if there's a problem. So we believe that Kubernetes is the solution that people are pretty much standardized around in the industry. We looked at a number of different things. We looked at Swarm, we looked at Mesos, we looked at Nomad. But as we talked to customers, everybody pretty much said, no, let's just standardize on Kubernetes. We think that's the one that's got the most traction. And so that's where we have focused. We've joined the Cloud Native Compute Foundation, which is heavily invested in promoting the use of Kubernetes and standardization. So now let's talk about building and delivering cloud native applications. So again, this is a traditional way that you build applications. You have a whole big chunk of code. I design it, I code it, build it, test it, release it, deploy it, and then somebody operates it. If anything needs to change, I've got to go rebuild the whole thing and go through that process. And you have a lot of dependencies that are designed into the code. So as you start to peel it back, if there's a problem with one part of the application, you need to understand what the dependencies are everywhere else. Additionally, the teams are organized by function. So you have somebody I would argue that at least through the 3 levels, that's typically one team. But you have somebody doing testing, somebody who actually is responsible for releasing, and yet another group of people is responsible for operations. And then you've got a long release cycle, 12 to 18 months to go through all this. The idea of going to a microservice-oriented, cloud-native application is that I can decompose this big monolithic application into smaller parts. I can put teams that will own each different part of the application, but they own the thing from end to end, so that you design your services right from the start to have a clearly defined set of APIs. And that means that if I need to change my front end, I don't have to change my back end, or vice versa. I don't have to completely rewrite everything in the application stack if I want to make a change to one part of it. And so that you can get cycle times much more quickly, or shorter cycle times. And it also, we don't really even have this in here, but you also have the ability to reuse code. Again, the customer we were talking to today, who's going to start dividing this monolithic app into smaller components, it's like, oh yeah, one of those, there's a function that we use in every application we run. And so being able to write it once as a microservice, and then every developer can then just pull that into the applications as they go forward, is hugely important. It makes it much easier to reuse that code. And I'll finally talk about modernizing legacy applications. The idea is that you really want to put it in a container so I can move it around. It makes it easier for me to modernize my infrastructure because I decouple the application from the actual infrastructure, whether it's running in a VM or public cloud or on a physical server that you can run Kubernetes on a bare metal server. And then you start to reintegrate that into the rest of your organization by decomposing parts of that. So I can pull out the GUI from the application, turn that into a microservice, and then just have APIs back into the rest of the monolithic application. So this is kind of how, so these are the three use cases that we see, and that's where most of our customers are today. They're somewhere between, we just want to containerize our existing environment and then starting to look at either modernization or building cloud native applications. That said, we do have a number of customers that are all the way over here that are either already using tools like Cloud Application Platform to fully automate the development and the deployment of applications, or they've built out their own Kubernetes-based infrastructure that they're using to deploy applications more rapidly. And so we actually see, though, that there's a spectrum that customers and use cases end up on. There's no, there are going to be some people who just want to have cloud-native applications. There are some people who are just going to modernize their existing applications, or they're running stateful applications. So with Kubernetes, with stateful sets and operators, you can now run an application that's not really, quote-unquote, cloud-native, but you can run that in a Kubernetes environment and manage it very, very well. The other thing is, how prescriptive do you want your development environment to be? Do you want your developers, every developer is free to build his own pipeline, his own test pipeline, his own deployment pipeline, or do you want to start standardizing how that's done across the organization? Again, I've spoken to some customers that they say this is the wild, wild west, right? Every development team is doing their own thing. How do I get governance? How do I get compliance? How do I prove auditability? How do I do any of those things? I've got 50 development teams, and if each one of them does it differently, that's a problem. Other customers say, I've got 50 development teams, and if each one figures out a different way to do something, that's okay, because I want them the flexibility to be as creative as possible. And of course, if you talk to developers, they want this, right? I want to be able to do whatever I want. You talk to the operators, they would push this over here as far as they can. So that's kind of the background of what we think the market's going through, what's driving customers to look at this. And so we have a set of tools. And the idea behind these tools is we want to help customers be faster, be more flexible as they react to market demands and react to their customers. At the same time, no IT discussion should be complete without talking about lowering costs. That's kind of the nature of IT. I've been in the business over 30 years, and it's always been the same. We can do things more cost effectively as technology evolves and improves. Even in the early days of mainframes, it was all about you buy a mainframe because you drastically reduce the cost of running your business. But more importantly, we think that people are also interested in maximizing return on investment. And this, we've talked at the keynotes about SUSE as an open company. One of the reasons we think that's important is open source, by eliminating lock-in, allows customers to move things, to change things, reuse things as appropriate, and we think that provides a better return on their overall investment. So 2 products in the portfolio. We kind of talked about those a little bit before. The CAS platform, which is really focused on deploying a container management solution. It's based upon Kubernetes, and it's coupled with SUSE Linux Enterprise Server technology, so that it's really targeted at the operator who wants to build out the infrastructure for developers to use. Cloud Application Platform is a service that's really designed much more around improving developer productivity. So to some extent, we're trying to address both ends of that spectrum that we talked about. But the idea is with CAS Platform, is, give you the tools, give you the basis on which you can build modern applications. But Kubernetes is a platform on which you build other platforms. It's not a complete solution for creating and deploying the applications, but the whole idea is make it easier. We have a number of customers that have started using upstream Kubernetes, and after 2 months of playing around with it, they say, yeah, this is not high value add for my company. I would rather use a distribution and pull that together. So that's what CAS platform is designed to do, but it all is fully based upon upstream technology, so that if you do want to start off with our distribution and decided that you want to do it yourself, you're not locked in any way. The cloud application platform, as I said, is really targeted at developer productivity. Deploying the application is really pretty simple. There's one command when you want to deploy your application. You can deploy it into a test cluster. You can deploy it into production. You can deploy it into multiple public clouds. So it's all about providing the flexibility to make the developer more productive. But it's also around getting rid of the complexity of building the application in the first place. Again, if you're going to build microservice-based architectures and you want to reuse those microservices, how do you make it easy for a developer to find services that are open to them to use and then to pull those in? And again, the same thing with the spectrum. Here's the full, I'm just going to build everything from scratch all the way over to, I want a production line, I want a factory, I want everything that's already predefined, and my developers are going to use the same methodology to do this. Somebody who's doing workload modernization could end up somewhere in the middle here, where they take an existing application, put it into a container, put it onto CAS platform, put an API on it, and then I can use Cloud Application Platform to build solutions that take advantage of that. Over here, lots of flexibility, lots of versatility, but perhaps not as fast to get things out the door. Just like anything else, when you standardize and you automate, you drive down the cost of doing the job of building and deploying. And this is kind of how we see this fitting together. So a couple points. If you want to run Kubernetes, you have a choice. You can run it in public cloud, and we're already working with Amazon, Azure, and Google to work with them on supporting either running our Kubernetes solution on top of their infrastructure as a service, or integrating with their Kubernetes instances, or you can run SUSE CAS platform in the data center. Either way, you deliver a standard Kubernetes environment that you can then, build your own DevOps pipeline. You can do whatever you want in that environment. Conversely, if you want something that does provide a more complete solution, a real application platform, then you can use SUSE Cloud Application Platform, and it will run on any Kubernetes. So you can choose to run it on SUSE CAS platform. We've been running on Amazon and Azure for, six months or so. We just announced support on Google GKE. So the advantage is I'm building an application, or I'm building an application process, and there may be some applications that I decide to push to my own data center. There may be some I would decide to push to Amazon. You can take that flexibility at the deployment time. You can have a single environment which will manage all of that for you. And then on top of that, we add a console that gives you the ability to, it falls off the side there, sort of gives you visibility into both the Cloud Application Platform environment, which is based upon Cloud Foundry, so it gives you visibility into the application set, it gives you visibility to the services set, and then we're expanding that to provide visibility into the Kubernetes endpoints as well. So a couple just quick screenshots. This is what it looks like. Any questions, you can ask Neil. He'll be more than happy to answer. But you can see I've got applications here, so if I've built and deployed an application, I can see the health of that. I can go into Marketplace and buy complete applications. I can look for services that I want to bundle into my environment, and I can look at the Cloud Foundry endpoints. We're extending that to provide Kubernetes as well, but it's an easily extensible framework, so you can add your own if you have some specific thing you want to pull into the environment. And just as an example, you can see something running on a SUSE Cloud Foundry, a cloud application platform instance. Here's something running on Bluemix at IBM. And then down here you can see actually looking directly at as CAS platform to get information on a Kubernetes environment. So very flexible. This is the kind of information you get from a metrics perspective. So you can really drill down and see what's the load on the various pods and the various endpoints. And you can do that on an application level as well. How many instances of an application have been spun up, or how many instances of a service have been spun up. And again, it runs across all your environments. So if you're building out more of a multi-cloud approach, this is a great way to keep track of all that. So just want to wrap up real quickly with roadmaps. There are roadmap sessions going on for each of these products in much more detail. But we're currently at 4.0 or we're in the process of bringing out Cloud Application Service Platform 4.0, and that is we're making some changes. It'll be based on kubeadmin. It will be running Creo as a default container engine, running on SUSE Enterprise 15 SP1, and then will be a much more recent version of Kubernetes. And then the plan going forward is to have releases about every quarter so that we can stay current with Kubernetes, the upstream Kubernetes. Some of the things we're looking at, and this is we're getting feedback from customers as to how they want to prioritize those, getting GPUs fully enabled, having service mesh, looking at either Kata containers or Firecracker or something like that, where people are starting to get these minimal VM capabilities to improve security for containers. And then going forward, 5.0 will have some additional updates. Again, we're trying to be agile with this product, so as things come along, we're rolling those out pretty quickly. Cloud Application Platform. We just announced here at SUSECON that we'll be making 1.4 available later this month. It'll be running on GKE in addition to Amazon and Azure. It is fully CF certified. So we'll pull in a bunch of CF updates to maintain that certification, pick up a lot of new features that are coming from upstream. One of the things we will be doing is including support for DRBD as backing storage. Up to now, we've supported SUSE Enterprise Storage. Problem is SUSE Enterprise Storage is a pretty big footprint to get started. So customers either had a very small requirement for a cloud application platform deployment, really didn't have a cost-effective storage option, or even they just want to do a proof of concept. So by using DRBD, we can give you persistent storage support for the workloads in cloud application platform at a cost-effective. We also announced that we're going to have a tech preview in 1.4 of Irene, which is Kubernetes native scheduling support. And I'm sure there's sessions on that go into more detail what that means. But effectively, right from Cloud Application Platform 1.0, we put all of the Cloud Foundry services in Kubernetes containers. So it was completely automated and managed by Kubernetes. With Irene, this is an upstream project which takes out some Cloud Foundry specific containerization and orchestration and replaces it natively with Kubernetes. So effectively, with SUSE Cloud Application Platform, you have a version of Cloud Foundry that's completely, I can remember, Kubernetified. We're trying to figure out what the appropriate word would be. But the idea is that if you you now have, you can build a Kubernetes native solution platform, and then you can add Cloud Foundry with all of its capabilities, but it's all Kubernetes. So you kind of build a Kubernetes environment. We'll add some things for metering and aggregation. Going forward, we're looking at things like, we're looking at service mesh for CAP as well as CAS platform. We're looking at serverless capabilities, whether it's Knative, OpenWhisk, OpenFAS. There's a number of different options there that we're, again, talking to customers to understand what the options might be. Doing some more integration with other development tools, some more front-end development tools, a repository such as GitHub or GitLab, integrating CI/CD so that you can really start to build a full development platform and use Cloud Application Platform to handle the last mile of deploying and managing the application. So a list of things again. I know that one of these presentations was going on in parallel with this one, but I think there's some more tomorrow that can help you dive in. So, for example, here's the sessions that I know of that are left. I'm doing this one again tomorrow, unless you really. I can't imagine why you'd want to come back. I'll say the same things. Talking about how you integrate GitLab, so start to integrate more of the developer pipeline, developer tools on the front end. Some security stuff, both just generically, how do you do security, as well as identity management. And then a couple others, some more DevOps pipeline, SQL Server, and I think that's SQL Server using CASP. The OpenSUSE guys are talking about Cubic, which is to CAS platform as OpenSUSE is to SLES. So the idea is that we've got a pretty big community that's involved in helping us to develop things more upstream. And then I have no idea what this is talking about, but it's a good title, much better title than mine. And then obviously we've got demos down in the technology showcase, and then Cubic is very prominently situated in the developer lounge in the back end of the room. So the whole point of coming up with this approach is to help customers move faster, do it with less expense, and really capitalize on the investments they made. So with that, I'll stop. Any questions, comments, debates?
I missed it when the slide went by. 2.0 CAP release roughly is... No, next one. There you go.
We're thinking end of this year. I'm looking at Jeff. He owns the schedule ultimately. Summer. Okay.
It depends on, IRENE is just not production ready yet,
yeah.
And that's the defining feature. So we're working with IBM and SAP.
Okay.
We've got people in, and we all want to see it production ready.
Yeah. So third quarter or something like that. Any other? I guess does this resonate with people? Does it make sense? Does it seem like a reasonable approach? I mean, those people who aren't actually building it in the room. It's interesting. We had a session with some customers on Tuesday, and it was really interesting because they were very, very operational focused. So when they look at this, they kind of go, okay, I get the Kubernetes piece, but the cloud application piece, they're kind of going, yeah, I don't know if because it's somebody else. That's somebody else's problem, right? And but we think that the point is that really going through and giving this kind of flexibility. If you want your own Kubernetes environment, you can do that. If you're really focused on I need some developer tools that are optimized for Kubernetes, just not coupling those two together gives customers a lot of flexibility and a lot of capability to optimize their environment and their journey into application modernization. So, if there are no more questions, I don't have anything more to say. So. All right, thanks.